Hey, we're excited that you're here. If you're a guest with us, thanks for coming. Um, yes, today is Mom's Day, Mother's Day. And I want to first say Happy Mother's Day to my mother. No, Mom, I'm not wearing a tie. I know should wear different shoes. I get all that. My mom's 85 years old, and she still tells me when she looks at the videos, she'll call me up and say, "Can't you wear something nicer?" I didn't raise you like that. But yeah, it's Mother's Day, and I was thinking about this actually quite a bit yesterday. And the Bible emphasizes in a lot of places about moms and honoring mothers. And I wrote something up just off of my just thinking and writing it, thinking about our folks here. And I want to read it to you because I won't remember it all. Being a mother encompasses a bunch of different maternal roles. There's stepmothers, there's foster mothers, there's adoptive mothers, and there's mothers who have even exchanged or experienced estrangement from their children. When we think of Mother's Day, a lot of times it's mixed emotions because we think it's a happy day, but yet my mom's not here, my kids aren't around me. So I don't want to miss that because that means something. Just because those things are true about you, you're still a mom. That's important. It also, I want to recognize mothers who've actually suffered the loss of a child or have themselves felt lost. Because I know that there are some of you here. But let me tell you today, you're not lost. God has you in his loving arms. And I want you to know that we see you and we celebrate you as a mom. You may have even thought if you're a mom and you have kids running around that it's too hard and I'm lonely. And I don't feel like I can do this. I'm miserable. And I'm just not good at this. Most of the time, moms can feel like they've been unrecognized. Because it's the 2 a.m.s when dad's sawing logs that mom is up. Mothers and fathers both play a vital role, right, in parenting. But each bring a unique set of strengths to raising children. And while mom and dads share in that responsibility, and dads do a lot and moms do a lot, there are things that dads cannot do. Okay, so some of you dads, don't get upset at me, okay? Because I'm just gonna brag on the moms here a little bit. Man, you can't have children. I'll just say it straight up. Women have children. You stood by the bed while she ripped the buttons off of your shirt. That's what you offered. You want some Taco Bell? I ran and got some. You know how that goes. Moms provide things that men cannot provide. There's these maternal instincts that a mom has. It's kind of weird. They understand their children and the little cues that they give when a lot of times we as dads miss it. I know I have. There's also this emotional connection that mothers share with their kids that is different. Not that dad's is wrong, but it's different than dad's. There's an emotional connection. Is my son in here? He's not in here. Sweet. Awesome. He's out there. My wife has an emotional connection with my 34-year-old son that I don't have. And if he's feeling sad, she will whip him up a chocolate cake in a second. You know what you do as moms, right? Mothers are also many times the primary caregivers, and they provide nurturing and comfort and emotional support. When they fall down, at least this is how I did it, probably wrong. You'll be okay. Sue runs out with the first aid kit, 4x4 gauze. She's got tape. Are you okay, honey? I'm like, he'll be fine. You know how we do, right? But there's this thing that mothers do, and they're good at it. They're really good at it. You may not think of yourself as a multitasker, and your environment, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But mothers, whether you like it or not, you have to multitask. It's just part of the job. Not only just balancing the child care, but household responsibilities. And here's the thing. A lot of you work too while being a mother. That's a lot. That's a lot. Moms give this emotional and intuitive understanding to their kids. They understand their personalities, their preferences, their likes, their dislikes. We sat down to eat, and I can remember Andrew and Sarah being just little kids. And I always learned that you eat what you were given. Well, unless you got your mother wrapped around your finger, you do. Would you like some pizza? How about some French fries? And I have to eat Brussels sprouts, over here. Which you guys know I hate Brussels sprouts. This idea that, can dads do that? They can to a degree, but there's nothing like a mom. There's nothing like a mom. And sometimes we get upset at them. We get confused by them. We often don't understand, why do they need a hug, and why do I have to beep the horn every time I leave the house? It's just something that moms need and deserve, right? You think that when your kids grow up, they leave home. They don't. They're like a Ferris wheel that keeps coming around and back and back. They come to your house, you're done grocery shopping that day, and they reach for the brown Meyer bags. And I'm like, what are you doing? And Sue's standing right behind them going, oh, they're just shopping, it's okay. I'm like, I just bought that food. I know, but it's okay. They need it. I'm like, what? They can go to Meijer. That's just what moms do, right? You buy something you're looking forward to, that bag of Doritos, and next thing you know, I see it, boop, boop, walking out my door. And of course, mom says, it's okay. Well, buy another bag. Who cares? Men don't get that sometimes. We're just not good at that. Sometimes we may be. But each mom and those that have experienced this, and some of you, to be quite honest, you may have not had a great example for a mom. That's why it's mixed emotions. Or your mom may not be here any longer. It's hard for you to celebrate today. But let me tell you, if that's the case, your mom would celebrate you if she were here. So don't feel bad about doing that. Celebrate. Celebrate her and celebrate what she's done for you. It took me a long time to realize that men and women are wired differently. And mothers and fathers are wired differently. And dads have a role of teaching their kids, and particularly their sons, how to be a man. And the mom is to teach their daughters how to be a lady. There have been times where, I'll end with this, there have been times where Sue and I have, our kids were struggling with something, Andrew in particular. I bought him a go-kart. He couldn't even fit the seat. His legs were too short. Now he's like that. So I put blocks on the go-kart. And I thought I explained to him where the brake was. But we went down this hill. He was going down this hill, forgot the brake. And he just went sailing off into the sticker bushes. And all I could see was the back of the thing. You know, he's screaming. Sue comes running out of the house, right? I grabbed the bar, grabbed the go-kart, yanked it out. He's got a helmet on, you know, he's fine. And I kept saying to Sue, he's fine, he's fine. And I said to her, I'm just trying to teach him how to be a man. And she said to me, you can do that later. Is he okay? The different roles that we play are unique that God gave us. But if you're a mom here today and if you're sitting here, a mom was somewhere close to you, somehow. Because you wouldn't be here without a mom. And so we just want to celebrate you. We want to thank you for what you've done. And let me just say this. It might seem hard, might seem difficult, but you'll get through it and you can do it with God's help for sure. You can do that. But we're glad you're here this morning. We're glad you're here. We have a gift for you later after you leave, and we just want to thank you for being here with us. We're in the series of Galatians, Freedom in Christ, and we're in chapter 1 still, and we're going to finish it today quickly. But I wanted to mention the Apostle Paul wrote Galatians, and he specifically wrote it for a reason, because there were people who, there were Jews who were distorting the gospel of Jesus. Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Christ plus nothing. Nothing more, nothing less. And they were saying, yes, Jesus Christ, plus you got to follow the law. That's not the gospel. That's another gospel. The gospel is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus for forgiveness of sins. That's the gospel. Read Romans, right? So he wrote this book while he was in Ephesus to the church in Galatia. That's why it's called Galatians. And so what he's trying to do, they thought that they were going to talk Paul down and try to change his gospel. But what we're going to look at today is the origin of Paul's gospel. And we're going to begin with this idea that the origin of Paul's gospel took no human reasoning or education. No human reasoning or education needed. Now, let me just say, education is not bad at all. And it can be helpful. But let me just say something to you. The Spirit of God living in you is greater than any education you can get. He opens the mind and the eyes and the heart. He illuminates things and shows you things that you can't learn in the classroom. Trust me. Spent a lot of years going to school. But there, in this case, and what Paul's saying, no human reasoning or education was needed. Let's read. Dear brothers and sisters, I want you to understand that the gospel message I preach is not based on mere human reasoning. In other words, Jesus died on the cross, and this is easy to see, and he rose again, and this is the gospel that saves us. And so Paul wanted us to understand that what he was given, what the Spirit of God gave him to write, more than half of the New Testament, didn't come from philosophy or him sitting down and mulling it over. It came directly from the Spirit of God. Verse 12. I received my message from no human source, and no one taught me. Now listen, Paul was a college-educated guy. Paul's saying, nobody taught me this. Instead, I received it by direct revelation from Jesus Christ. Can you imagine what that was like? I mean, there's really no record of Paul saying what it looked like or what it sounded like. But we do have an idea of kind of where it took place. But Paul wants us to make sure that he didn't just drum this up. Like the message that we live and the message that we preach and the message that we pursue and share, many times, we forget. This is God's message, not my message. Paul the apostle says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It is the power of God unto salvation to those that believe." Not ashamed. Yes, I'm educated, but I'm not ashamed. Why? Because this is God's message, not my own. Paul goes on. Let's look at Ephesians. He was actually in Ephesus when he wrote Galatians, but he writes this: "I was chosen to explain to everyone this mysterious plan that God, comma, the creator of all things, comma, had kept secret from the beginning." What's the mystery? You know what the mystery is? The mystery of the gospel and the church. Before Paul, this was not out there or open. No writers had written about it. Why? Because Jesus hadn't died. It didn't happen. There were prophets that talked about it's going to happen, but he used the apostle Paul, of all people, the biggest Christian killer in the time. And he did something in him and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you something that I haven't given anybody else, and I want you to share it with the world." How would you like that responsibility? Went from Christian killer to Christian, and basically was told, "Okay, I want you to write half the New Testament." Eek. Like, what do you do with that? Paul goes on to say, and I titled this, "You know who I was." You know who I was. Why does he say this? Because he wants to establish that none of this is of him. And he told us what he was capable of, and people knew what Paul did in his past. 13, let's read. "You know what I was like when I followed the Jewish religion." Yeah. "How I violently persecuted God's church. I did my best to destroy it." Yes, he did. "I was far ahead of my fellow Jews in my zeal for the traditions of my ancestors." Like Paul's laying out something here. Listen, you know me. You know who I am. You know what I've done. My reputation follows me. But God chose me to do this. And he wanted them to understand there was nothing in and of Paul himself that made him good or that added to the message. It was the fact that God chose him in spite of who he was. Okay, so this is a good thing, because all of us here are like a train wreck waiting to happen most of the time. We have backgrounds, right? I do. We have things that we've done wrong. I think to myself sometimes, I am the last person that should be standing here. Honestly. I mean, I got friends from high school. When Sue says, "Yeah, JP's a pastor," you know what they do? They're like, "He's a what? He does what? You mean at a church?" seriously, just like my reputation follows me. And here's the weird part. Paul, this guy was one bad dude. He was bad. Acts chapter 8, verses 1 and 3. Let me read that to you. By the way, before Paul's conversion, his name was Saul. Saul was one of the witnesses, and he agreed completely with the killing of Stephen, the first martyr, by the way. A great wave of persecution began that day by Paul. Isn't that weird? A great wave sweeping over the church in Jerusalem, and all the believers except the apostles were scattered through the region of Judea and Samaria. From one person's effort scattered the church. What do you think one person's effort could do to share the gospel with people? Well, we'll get to that later. But Saul was going everywhere to destroy the church. He went from house to house, dragging out both men and women to throw them in prison. What a jerk. Seriously, dude? Man. But Paul's not afraid to identify, this is what I did, this is who I was. And there is no real merit in God choosing me except for His grace and mercy alone. That's it. So the question is, how did this happen? This is the killer right here in the text. But even before I was born, God chose me and called me by His marvelous grace. I hope you're happy about that today if you're a believer. You know, He knew before time that you would accept Jesus. You know that He has a plan for you. You know that. So what path are you going to take? Paul's path? Your own path? Like he's got you. He knows you. He knows what you're doing. Sometimes that scares me. Then it pleased Him to reveal His Son to me so that I would proclaim the good news about Jesus to the Gentiles. Paul the Apostle was not the best Bible school candidate at all. As a matter of fact, he would be labeled by all terms as one who fought hard against Christianity. And this is what happens. Listen to me closely. This is what happens when you have an encounter with Jesus. He will spin you around so quick and head you in the direction that He wants you to go. And the people around you will be going, he does what? They go where? That's the way it works. And it's by His grace that He does that. Unmerited favor. Nothing we deserve. We don't deserve to serve Him. But by His grace, He calls us to do that. Why? So He'll be honored and glorified. He says then, in verse 16, to reveal His Son to me so that I would proclaim the good news about Jesus to the Gentiles when this happened. Now, how many of you can remember, the day you got saved? How many of you remember when you told that first person and they just looked at you like you had 3 heads on your shoulder? Remember that? Yeah, but weren't you at the bar? What didn't we let? How about let? What did we? Didn't you and I were pretty good last weekend, right? What happened to you? What happened to you? Well, Jesus got a hold of me. And here's where we're weak. You ready? Every single one of us, self-included. We got the strongest message on the planet, in the universe. And we don't share it because we're scared of what people are going to think of us. I know it's true. You don't have to tell me it's true. I know it's true. Yeah, but at work, when we were hanging out, at lunch, and I said that joke, or I did, okay, yeah, so that means you're just as broken as everybody else. And maybe, just maybe, God getting a hold of you and calling you to himself could be a testimony of broken people being fixed. How about that? But are you going to be willing, like the Apostle Paul? The Apostle Paul says this, but I did not rush out to consult with any human being. Now, if I was Paul and I was on the Damascus road, I got it right this week, didn't I? Damascus? Sweet. If I was Paul and I had that experience on the Damascus road, and man, I was on this road and I saw this bright light and I didn't know where the voices were coming from. It was kind of crazy. And next thing you know, I couldn't see anything. And they took me to this city, and nobody wanted to talk to me because they were scared of me. I would have been telling everybody. Like, this is crazy. Well, I don't know what's going on, man. I mean, this is nuts. You know what Paul says? I didn't tell anybody about my conversion. But there's a reason. There's a reason. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. This was not made known to people in other generations, just like we were talking about before, the mystery, as it is now revealed to his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit. The Gentiles, listen, this is the mystery. The Gentiles are co-heirs, members of the same body, and partners in the promise of Christ Jesus through the gospel. The mystery is this, that God doesn't just love Jews, he loves Gentiles too. That's the mysterious plan that Paul was asked to share. The gospel. Jews, Gentiles. But he didn't tell anyone. Why? I'll tell you why. Even though Paul was a college graduate, he had some learning to do with God. And it was time for some training. It was time for training. He said, I didn't tell anybody, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to consult with those who were the apostles before I was. Instead, now I did the math here. Instead, I went away into Arabia. Paul has this experience. Then he goes 900 miles to Arabia. Why would you walk 900 miles just to go to the desert? It doesn't make sense to me. And later, I returned to the city of Damascus, 135 miles back. Then, 3 years later, I went to Jerusalem, 135 miles the other way, to get to know Peter and stay with him for 15 days. Interesting, isn't it? The only apostle I met at the time was James, the Lord's brother. I declare before God that what I am writing to you is not a lie. Honestly, if you hear Paul's story and then you hear all this, you know how somebody tells you a story and you're going, dude, that ain't true. Shut up. There is no way that happened. That did not happen. And Paul, is what he's saying here is, listen, I'm not lying to you. This actually happened. This stuff happened to me. And then after that visit, this is crazy. I went north in the province of Syria and Cilicia, 560 miles. By the way, that was actually near Tarsus, where Paul was from. That was north of Jerusalem, north and east, north and west a little bit. And I think to myself, God saved him on the Damascus road. He turned his life around. He got a hold of him. And immediately, for some weird reason, he removed him from people. Interesting, isn't it? Many times when God is doing something in our life, we can't hear because of the noise around us. Do you think they would have listened to the Apostle Paul? No. Christian killer. Guy's an idiot. What's going on? All of a sudden, Paul, you want to switch horses in the middle of the stream? Who says you get to do that? You killed Christians. God, in his divine sovereignty, decided to lay it upon Paul to, hey, get away from these people. And it was like 3+ years. He was gone. Spent a lot of time in the desert. Doesn't sound like fun. Just saying. There's another story about some people who had to learn a lesson, and they spent time in the desert, 40 years worth. Have you ever thought to yourself, God, why do you have me in the desert? I'm going to tell you why. Because, son, I'm trying to teach you something. Yeah, but I don't like it. Like I said, I'm trying to teach you something. Yeah, but I'm thirsty. I have all the water you need. Yeah, but I'm hungry. I have all the food that you need. I'm trying to teach you something. Don't think that if you're having a desert or dry season in your life and you've ever wondered, God, where are you? I don't get it. I can't do this. Oh, he's so working on you. He's preparing you for something greater. The question is, are we going to submit to that or are we going to fight it? If you're like me, you'll fight it for a little bit and then you finally realize, I can't win this one, and give in. Could be in relationships. It could be in a job. It could be in a situation. You can't pay your bills. It could be anything. It could be stuff you're struggling with. And it could be your car. Oh, I hate cars. They cost so much money to fix. Anything. Like many times you feel like, where are people? Where they're not around me. And I feel like I'm alone. I'm in the desert. This is how Paul felt. This is how Israel felt. They were not alone. God put them in a situation where he could teach them to the greatest capacity. Because we as humans, the first thing we'll do, man, we will whip out a post in a second. I really think God is working on me. And no, sorry. That's not. Can you imagine Moses if he had one of these in the desert? Hey, God, we need some more manna. Seriously, the Apostle Paul. Yeah, Jesus, I just ran into you a couple days ago, and I got these scales on my eyes. I'm wondering, could you take that? No. He allows us to go through these things that don't make sense so that he can clear our minds and our hearts of things so he can have all of it at once. Not just half of it, all of it. Well, I don't like that. Okay, then do your path. Stay there and struggle. You'll get it one of these days. It took Israel 40 years. Hope it doesn't take you 40. Sometimes I think, man, I'm so thankful that God's gracious for me because I can be stubborn. I like things my way. You know, I come up here today and these guys put the podium up crooked. I'm looking down at them and they're laughing at me. See, they know me, right? We all like things our way, right? We have to have everything lined up and in order, and here's my schedule. And God goes, zip, swipe right. I'm going to take you to a desert where you can hear me properly. I'm going to remove you from that relationship or that place so you can hear me. A lot of times we don't like it. But let me tell you what, had the Apostle Paul not done those things and what he did, I wonder if we would have those wonderful books in the New Testament. Yeah, Paul, I want you to write a letter. I'm going to put you in jail to do that. Great. Awesome. The accommodations, I'm sure, are wonderful. Then he moves on to this, and I've labeled it, it's now time. After all that time, it was about three plus years, and you can read that in Acts chapter 9 if you'd like. The recording of all of that in more detail is in Acts chapter 9 and following chapters. It's now time. Let's look at verse 22. And still, the Christians in the churches in Judea didn't know me personally. Yeah, no kidding. All they knew was that people were saying, the one who used to persecute us is now preaching the very faith he tried to destroy. They definitely had to have Facebook or social media. Like, they're like, yeah, did you hear about that guy? Paul? Like, he's over there. He's like the next street up, and he's 3 houses down, and I heard he was here. Right? And then they realized, wait, he's not killing us anymore. He's actually preaching our message. What happens when God uses a broken life to preach his message? Verse 24, and they praise God because of me. Not because of yourself. You have nothing to offer, nor do I. Only our bodies, our minds, and what God created. I will say this to you when I go back to my home church, where soon I met. I haven't been back there for 27 years. I have not been in the building. 25 years I have not been in the building. But if I were to go back there today, and they would see me, there would be ladies that would say this to me. I remember changing your diaper in the nursery. That's what they would say to me. And you know the next thing they would say? Weren't you the one that got kicked out of Christian school? And you know what I say? Yep, but God. But God. People will remember your past with the intent to try to hurt you. But let me just tell you, that doesn't define you. God defines you. God defined Paul. Your past doesn't define you. I don't care what it is. Drugs, alcohol, divorce, addiction. I don't care. Broken relationships. I don't care. That does not have to define you. Paul, Christian killer. Yeah, isn't that the guy that was killing people, man? Yeah, but he's preaching the gospel. And they praise God. Do you want your life to be used that way? Are you willing? Are you willing to suffer the ridicule of what you used to be so you can tell them of what you are now? Come on. This is the church's job. I would always say to Andrew when he's little, buddy, don't be scared. It'll be okay. I'm going to say it to you. Don't be scared to share your story. It's a wonderful story of God's grace, mercy, love, and acceptance of you, not your past. There's 3 applications that I've drawn from this as I was reading and studying. When God calls you, neither your inability nor ability can stop what he wants to do in you. Yeah, but well, if it was about you, then yes. But this is not about you. This is about God. And his story, the gospel. Well, didn't they? Yeah, they probably did. Well, didn't I see them? Yeah, you probably did. But let's talk about your life. How about that? But what you have to understand is the things that you've done or your inability. Well, I just can't talk. I'm not a good orator, and I can't say things right. Or, ooh, I'm very good and I lecture all the time. Listen, God doesn't need either or any of it. When he wants to do it, he'll empower you to do it. How? The Spirit of God that lives in you will empower you. You know that person that you're going to see tomorrow at work and you've been thinking but hadn't said anything? I should probably share the gospel with him. Do you love him enough to share the gospel with them so they can choose not to go to hell? Or don't you care? Are you willing to take a risk like Paul? The second one. This is the hardest one, I think, for some of us. Sometimes when he removes you from family, friends, and home, he has something better for you. Well, I don't like that. Neither do I. I'm sure Paul didn't either. Yeah, Paul, I got something better for you. I'm going to stick you in a jail over in Rome. Hey, great. But we think so small-minded. Like that's it. Now, are these things important? Family and friends and where you live? Yeah, those things are valuable and important. But sometimes, just sometimes, God will stick you in a place and you'll look up and say, how in the world did I get here? I don't have any friends. I'm lonely. My family's 1,000 miles away. And I don't know where I'm going to live. That sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? And the last one. When it seems like all has been taken away from you, and you have been taken away from all, he then uses you to glorify himself. Romans chapter 12, verse 1. I beseech you, I beg you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you just present your body a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is a reasonable service. It's reasonable. It's reasonable to empty yourself. Is it easy and fun? Nobody said it was easy and fun, but it's reasonable because of what Christ did. Well, I don't like that type of Christianity. I get it. I'm a preacher and I don't like it sometimes. Do I really have to do that, God? JP? And I have learned obeying is better than going back to the desert. I'm telling you. We got to get this in order. And Paul's trying to communicate here that God did something in me. I mean, Paul had status. He was a Sadducee, not a Sadducee, although they were sad. He was a Pharisee and a Sadducee. Followed the law perfectly. Oh, here comes Paul. Better straighten up. Like when he came in the door, everybody knew him. And then God decided to take all that away, turn it all around, and use Paul for his glory. The question is, are you willing to at least consider what God would have you do? Well, I don't like doing that. It's not my thing. Oh, stop it. Listen, many times God puts you in places where you don't want to be so he can use you so you can get out of the way. Why? Listen, when the guy said, we want you to speak every week, I was freaking out. Because I like to have my ducks in a row. You know, I like to know what I'm doing. You know, and I'm thinking, that's so much, God, I don't know if I'm there. And God in his grace, I'm not. He's gracious and kind to me, and you're kind enough to come every week to sit and listen to me blubber. But here's the thing. God will use you in places where you least expect it if you're willing when he asks. The question is, are you willing? I hope you are.